Welcome to Football Podcast with Brandon White
and Rob Thackrey.
Here to discuss the
I did it different this time.
Damn it, throwing me off. Here to discuss the offseason of the AFC North, the draft, the free agency, the demise of the Baltimore Ravens.
One could say that. We'll see how this breaks down. It seems like every team seems to get some of our ire each of these episodes, so I think you're tipping your hat a little bit, spoiling some things per se, but who knows? We'll probably talk a little bit about the goings-ons of the season since we've been doing these week by week sequentially.
It's been catching us with our fucking pants down.
Just a little bit. They seem to know. So, just to right off the bat, I'm going to start with the Marlboro Man himself, Smoking Jay Cutler. We didn't do first episode was AFC East. It was way before Ryan Tannehill blew his ACL.
Light him up.
Blew his ACL. Now going to have surgery, season ending. They picked up Jay Cutler, who had retired.
Smoking Jay.
Now he's going to take his Marlboro Man, his camel smoking, his cool smoking ass down to Miami.
He's taking his smoking talents down to South Beach.
We'll
care.
We'll see how this goes. This obviously doesn't change anything for Brandon. He's still as high, if not higher, on the Dolphins as he was because he's a lunatic.
I like Cutler.
And just one more reason why I think the Dolphins are going to fail.
Pop quiz. Who was Jay Cutler's offensive guru during his statistical best season?
It's Adam Gase. I already know this one. Because the Chicago Bears and whatnot.
You didn't give the listeners a chance.
I don't care. I don't like this. Doesn't matter. Jay Cutler doesn't need cardiovascular training to be a quarterback.
No, he doesn't.
Another weird thing, Ezekiel Elliott suspended for 6 games. I said this during the NFC East episode. He's going to get suspended. You refuted it. Granted, he still has 3 days, as is coming out, fairly new. Still has 3 days to actually appeal it. And granted,
probably get dropped to 2.
Probably get dropped, but still, I mean, 6 games for basically not. Basically, Tom Bradying it, where he just didn't want to help the investigation.
It's poetic justice because Jerry Jones was like super anti-Patriots and Robert Kraft during the Deflategate scandal, and then turned around and got shit on worse with the Ezekiel Elliott beating on women, Ray Rice style.
It's a really interesting thing because they still haven't really said what happened.
They had thousands of text messages they scoured, and they apparently had photographic evidence to indicate that he did commit an assault against a female who may or may not have also been a cunt.
Okay, that works. Bills also basically traded their whole team away for picks. Traded Sammy Watkins away to the Rams, and then traded was it Ronald Darby? I'm still trying to
Ronald
Darby, the corner, to the Eagles for Jordan Matthews and a third. I think they got a second. No, a sixth.
Second.
A second for Watkins.
Yeah.
And then a corner like EJ Gaines, I want to say.
Yeah. So now the Bills have 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds next year.
Yeah, what were you saying? They're trying to tank.
They're tanking until Tom Brady retires,
yeah,
and then when they have all the picks, they're just going to try to own the division.
I don't think they're doing math right because 2018 he's not retiring.
No, they're going to tank next year too. The Jets are going to somehow get like the 3 pick this year after tanking. I don't know how this works.
Colin Kaepernick is still unsigned. I'm going to go into this a little bit with the Ravens, but yeah, Colin Kaepernick is still unsigned. Jay Cutler got a deal before him, so we'll see how that goes.
This lets you know how race works.
So yeah, that was just a couple big things. Unless you think of anything that you want to say.
I just think it is funny that like as we do divisions, like shit happens behind us. Like we were walking away from a division and things occur. Like, we started with the AFC East, week 1, and, like, all the things have happened in the AFC East. And then we did the NFC East, and then they were like, well, we can't be having that. So, then, like, the Cowboys and the Eagles have a bunch of stuff happen. And we did, the NFC, we did the AFC West, It's been quiet. All's quiet on the Western Front.
I don't know. Keenan Allen got blown the fuck up.
Man, I watched that
video
video so many times. That was great. And Keenan Allen did the blowing up. He did the blowing. He was the daddy. He was the one who knocked. That was great. Joint practice with the Rams. A little bit of a kerfuffle.
A kerfuffle?
A kerfuffle.
I don't even know how to measure what a kerfuffle could even be.
Basically, as we're doing divisions, about a week, 2 weeks after we go over them, something crazy happens in the division. So next week, the AFC West is going to have like something, I don't know, the 24 members of the Chargers will go on IR or something, I'm sure. But anyways, we're not here to talk about those divisions. That's enough catching up. Let's discuss the AFC North. Starting with the division-winning Pittsburgh Steelers last year, record of 11-5. That was good for 6-2 at home and 5-3 away. First in the AFC North. They were the third seed in the playoffs. They lost in the AFC Championship game to the Patriots, shock of the century. But still a team that was, it had its annual Ben Roethlisberger injury late in the season that, could have been part of the difference. And Le'Veon Bell, well, I'm sure
there
we'll
had
have
a lot of really weird things going in this season because, the first little bit, Roethlisberger was on fire, Bell was out, and then Roethlisberger started to take a dip because he was injured. He ended up taking a game, a game and a half off. Then they both came back with Brown eventually lighting it up because Landry Jones didn't want to throw to him. And then you had Bell doing whatever he did, eventually taking Buffalo for 200 yards in that one game, and then Roethlisberger obviously just meshing again. So they definitely hit their stride at the right time at the end of the season.
So many what ifs on last season. What if Le'Veon Bell hadn't been suspended? Would he have the rushing record? What if Ben didn't get hurt towards the end of the year? Could that team have been the 1 seed? What could have happened with that season?
Such an interesting thing. They ended up losing 36-17 to the Patriots, which ended up not being a very highly contested game. Over the course of the offseason, ended up losing D'Angelo Williams to Total Impact Wrestling. Justin Gilbert to, I don't know, the street, because we eventually figured out that he couldn't play.
Keeping it real on the street.
Lawrence Timmons to the Dolphins, which we actually failed to talk about during the AFC East episode. Still can play. Still really great. Part of what I'm expecting to see as far as a linebacker. Well, he's in the middle. He's part of the linebacking exodus that they're going to start to have because they have people like was it Donnell Ellerbe, not Shane Ray, Ryan Shazier, these linebackers that are really coming up. So we'll see in their third 4 year players.
Can we start referring to Lawrence Timmons as the other LT?
Marcus Wheaton ended up leaving because at this point they would have been 5-6 deep on wide receivers.
Would Sammy Coates have still been the 4 if Marcus Wheaton was hanging around?
Probably, because Martavius Bryant got reinstated, and he was adamant on Twitter that he wasn't getting replaced by the guy from USC that they ended up drafting in the second round. So we'll see. He was saying Sammy Coates is going to be the 4. Sammy Coates is good for about 1 game a year.
As I learned last year.
So that's interesting. Zach Mettenberger, LSU great.
Still hanging in there.
I don't think he's currently still on the market. Zach Mettenberger, guys. Go out there and get him. Former Tennessee Titan great.
Yeah.
Like Jamarcus Russell. LSU great, man.
Letting Mettenberger go is not. They could go out and get Charlie fucking Batch back. That would be an upgrade.
I was gonna say, yeah, they ended up letting Mettenberger go. Signed Landry Jones because Charlie Batch just doesn't want to play anymore. He's 47. Also ended up signing quarterback Cody Sensabaugh, Coty. Fucking weird.
Yeah, that's not how you spell that name at all.
Defensive end Tyson Alualu, running back Niles Davis, who ended up ending. I think he ended the season on the Packers.
I thought it was Nile Davis, no S.
Was it?
I don't know. It's a weird name.
But yeah, he ended up he was like the Awakening, but the Kansas City Chiefs version. Both him and what's his face from the Seattle Seahawks ended up just like trading teams over the course of the last season. They were all like all on a different team.
Oh, running back wise?
Yeah.
Oh God. Damn it! You actually picked up the Seahawks running back in fantasy. Funny. You were like, "Oh yeah, man, he's gonna be my guy." he was so the guy that you can't remember his name now.
Ended up signing James Harrison, or re-signing him for another 1 year thing. This guy's crazy.
He's like 38, and he's the scariest man in the NFL.
Yeah, he was push carting like 1,050 pounds at one point on Instagram. He's a scary man. I would not want him after me, even though he does play mostly in like subset and packages now. Like you put him out there for like 35, 40 plays a game. Get him to rush the.
This is a man who retired at what, like 34, 35, came back, was a Bengal, and then realized that life could be worse. So he went back to the Steelers, and apparently he's going to chase Tom Brady to heaven.
Tackle Alejandro Villanueva, who was a practice squad player for the Eagles, ended up letting him go. Great left tackle. They ended up paying him. Got a big 4-year contract. Fantastic. Good for him. Head coach Mike Tomlin got an extension. I always find it interesting because like the Steelers have definitely had the least amount of coaches over the course. They've had like
3 head coaches in 50 years.
Yeah, it was.
And Tomlin is like maybe he's good. Like I don't think any of us are sure.
It's been like 9 years and we're still not sure.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
He's not terrible. The Steelers are competitive, but he's also not drafting the players. You know?
Yeah.
He's not their GM. He's not a Marvin Lewis or a Belichick.
Antonio Brown got paid. Le'Veon Bell got franchise tagged, and he still has yet to actually, as of the recording of this episode, sign his tender or show up for training camp. So I technically didn't list him on my list, even though he did get tagged, and he will get paid more. $4.5 million more than the highest paid running back in the league, newly minted Devontae Freeman, who we also didn't get to talk about in our NFC South episode. So yeah, he still doesn't want to sign it because he wants to get paid. But I mean, if somebody's going to break through that glass ceiling, as far as like getting more than like $8 to $9 million guaranteed over the course of their contract, I mean, it's probably going to be Le'Veon Bell because the man is basically a slot receiver that can also be the best running back in the league.
I want to see David Johnson's contract in Arizona when he gets his next one.
Oh my God. And truthfully, the biggest that isn't a re-signing, the biggest, and I didn't put it in the actual arrival section, but Martavius Bryant, I talked about this just a little bit before, but that's probably going to be the biggest
his re-arrival,
re-addition to the
comeback
team.
Player of the year.
Maybe
he didn't get Le'Veon, so.
But yeah, Martavius Bryant's probably going to be one of the biggest re-additions in terms of just adding more weapons to the already deadly team that they have as far as it on offense.
The bees.
NFL draft, I think they got a pretty good end pick in the 30th pick in J.J. Watt's brother, T.J. Watt, is outside linebacker, sort of that like defensive end outside linebacker hybrid that they like to is pretty popular nowadays.
Not as physically imposing as J.J. Watt, but more prepared than J.J. Watt. So like you don't know what you're going to get. He could be a monster right from the go.
Definitely more of a linebacker than J.J. Watt, whereas J.J. Watt's definitely more of a D tackle. He's like the D tackle D end, whereas T.J. Watt is definitely more of a D end like stand up.
A little bit smaller, a little bit quicker, stronger on the edge. Whereas Watt is just kind of like a sequoia that falls over the O-line and kills everyone.
Yeah, I mean, out of Wisconsin, watched him specifically during the Big Ten championship. He just blew up Penn State's line. He's scary. He really is. So, I mean, if he ends up developing into something even close to what J.J. Watt could be, like, that's a scary Pittsburgh defense as far as their linebacking core going forward. Round 2, Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver out of USC. USC wide receivers have been really interesting as of late because they're the boom or bust, truthfully. You don't really get much.
That's just USC in general.
I mean, that's truthful, but I feel like their offensive players generally are boom or bust, whereas like defensive players, at least when they were coming out under Pete Carroll and then a little bit afterwards before they started getting sanctioned all to hell, were pretty consistent. He's getting added to a stable of wide receivers that we talked about that's pretty deep. We mentioned Sammy Coates, we mentioned Martavius Bryant, Eli Rogers, who I completely blanked on early in the day when we were talking about this, and then of course Antonio Brown. So I mean, that's if he ends up, and he doesn't even have to perform this year, maybe even not next year, but I mean that's a pretty decent lineup that you have there, and you're trying to obviously get the most out of Ben while he's still there, because it's not like he has a lot of time. He's in that Aaron Rodgers, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers type area where they're all reaching the end of their career, so they're going to try. I imagine they're going to try and tool up for the end of this, because same thing you were talking about with Brady. Like, they're going to have to make a push here soon because he's not going to be here forever, and you've already seen him start to deteriorate, which is part of the reason why they haven't been as consistent as they could have been going forward.
Right.
Round 3, James Conner, running back out of Pittsburgh, highest jersey sales since the NFL draft, beating out Tom Brady. Just a little tidbit, really interesting. Cancer survivor, which is probably what a lot of it brings into. But
cancer survivor played at Pitt, and he is playing for the Steelers now.
Yeah, but I mean,
across the board, selling.
Crazy amount of jersey sales, which I thought was really, really interesting. Joshua Dobbs, quarterback out of Tennessee. Definitely a project. I don't know if they're necessarily pegging him as the next guy to be.
He was talked about a couple years ago. People were like, this Dobbs kid might be a high pick, and then here we are, 4th round.
I like your Gruden impression. This Dobbs guy, I really like him. He's got the arm, and
Joshua Dobbs, I like this guy. He's just a football player at heart. I tell you what, you see him out there on the field, he breaks the huddle, he's in command. This is the kind of guy, if I was going to coach again, and I'm not trying to get people excited, but Joshua Dobbs is definitely the kind of quarterback I want running my offense.
Yeah, like Brandon Gruden, what exactly did you say during that whole thing? It was 45 seconds worth of nothing. But I don't developmental quarterback going forward. They're going to have to give him a couple years at least to sit behind Ben. So we'll see.
If Ben gives him a couple years,
that's the whole thing. Is that I don't know if this guy. Every time I see a quarterback taken in these rounds here between 2 and 4, I'm just like Kevin Cobb. Immediately, just Kevin Cobb.
You just gave Joshua Dobbs a concussion. Congratulations.
I also gave him a weird mustache.
Oh, wow.
Brian Allen, cornerback out of Utah. Interesting because they also went cornerback in round 3 as well, in addition to James Conner. Round 6, Colin Halba. I don't know what I put as LS. What the fuck does LS mean?
Long snapper.
Oh yeah, I was doing this.
How can you disrespect a long snapper that way?
Just be warned. The AFC North just went the hell off as far as specialty picks. There's 3 kickers that got picked,
3 kickers, 2
and
long
a long
snappers.
snapper that got picked. So it was really, really interesting. They were just specialty players, man. Long snappers are fun.
It's a long snapper out of Louisville, no less.
Yeah, long snapper. I mean, to get drafted as a long snapper means that they must have seen something inside.
What if you can do magic? Because people in Pennsylvania like long snappers that can do magic.
Specifically, Eastern Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Round 7, Keon Adams, linebacker out of Western Michigan, just adding to the linebacking core, like I was talking about, trying to get some pass rush because they really. I mean, granted, like I said, Shazier's good. Harrison is definitely a subset special package player. I imagine that's where they're going to start to go here soon. That's if T.J. Watt ends up being what they need, they probably won't need to add much to that pass rush later, which means they can start, as from a defensive standpoint, start focusing on that secondary because
their defense already wasn't bad.
No,
now it's reinforced and they're doing that Steelers thing where they're making sure their defense is just going to keep being consistently, above average.
They were up and down throughout the season, the defense was. We weren't really sure what was going on with them, but once they entered the playoffs, they got scary, and they got scary quick.
Oh, yeah.
So 2017 predictions. I got to pull my thing up here, but before I pull it up, pretty sure I had them going somewhere in the range of 11-5, 12-4, because it wouldn't surprise me if they weren't. Look at this, 11-5. So I had them basically repeating the exact same record. Third seed in the AFC, so literally almost a complete repeat of what they had last season. 5-1 in the division, basically laying the smackdown against the other people in their division.
I actually
because I mean, when you really look at it, like look at their offense. Like I don't.
Who's stopping that offense?
I mean, when really, like, there's a very small set of like teams. You know, you can probably count them on your one hand that'll actually be able to match up well against that and take away what they need to do. Because I mean, Antonio Brown is probably the best wide receiver in the league right now. Le'Veon Bell is probably the best running back in the league, and Ben is arguably in Le'Veon Bell, best running back in the league.
No.
Arguably one of the best running backs in the league, and Ben Roethlisberger can still be top 5 elite.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, just based on that, and not even talking about the pieces that they've added on offense, they could outscore goddamn anybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have them going 14-2 and ending up with the 1 or the 2 seed. Just depending, like, if the Patriots go 16-0, they're the 2 seed. If the Patriots go 14-2, the Steelers are the 1 seed. Yeah, on tiebreakers. That offense is ridiculous, and if the stars align and all of those players are healthy and not suspended at the same time, that's a team that can rattle off 14 wins, and like one of their losses will be the Ravens, and the other one will be the Browns in Week 17.
Yeah, because they'll be resting Ben or something along those lines.
Like, it's a team that's got all that capability, and with the way that they restocked their defense, they'll have depth, so defensive development, you know, through training camp, I mean, they could have stars, or at least they'll have depth, and if that offense is healthy and, you know, off the ganja, then they are...
Stay off the weed!
They are arguably the best offense in the league.
It's up there. Like I said, like the defense-wise, if you're trying to match up against them, is going to be very difficult. I can't think of many teams.
You've got the best route runner in the league in Antonio Brown. That alone is problematic. Martavis Bryant, no small man, no bad hands. They have depth at the wide receiver position. And Big Ben is just one of those guys that you don't need much of an O-line because he's not an easy man to take down.
And I mean, their O-line's still pretty good, so it's not like they're
so I mean, if they get injured on the O-line, it's not the end of the world for that team. Like, Big Ben can somehow make a play. It's just like, we've all seen it. Big Ben is like 3 inches off of the ground going down with the ball and still manages to get a pass off for a touchdown.
Raises his Bortles.
Yeah.
slings it 60 yards down the field.
Right. So, I think we're both feeling pretty good about the Steelers this year.
Yeah, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't be. Heading forward, Baltimore Ravens, second in the division, good enough for 8-8, so just about average. At home, they were 6-2. Away, they were 2-6. So a little bit of parity there. It was really interesting. Obviously, no playoffs with that record. AFC is very hotly contested. Notable departures, Elvis Dumervil, 35-year-old linebacker, who I feel like you were really happy for him to leave over some sort of really... I mean, this was a couple years ago, but...
He was a Bronco.
Yeah.
And him and Von Miller were very good on opposite ends.
So they had some sort of like weird, we can't sign him like kind of thing where they got the paperwork in like 3 minutes too late, and then he ended up they
faxed
breaking out
too late. Like it was like 4:03 p.m. when it got faxed, so it didn't go through.
Yeah, so ended up being a Raven, and really not living up to the hype for the most part.
He played well on their defense. The problem is their defense has just been mediocre the past few years.
Ended up Dennis Pitta oft injured. Ended up getting cut because he got injured again
for like the 8th season in a row.
Yeah, I mean he's like I said oft.
He's been hurt since high school.
Oft injured. They traded D tackle Timmy Jernigan to the Eagles for a higher 3rd round pick. Traded center Jeremy Zuta to the 49ers, so him and Elvis Dumervil hook up back over there. Tackle Ricky Wagner ended up leaving, going to the Lions. Fullback Kyle Juszczyk.
The juice.
I had so much trouble typing this because I was like, this guy has one vowel and 8 letters in his name.
Ask me how I know if he's Polish.
How? There's like 4
Z's. Just a lucky guess.
Also signed with the 49ers, so it seemed like the 49ers were taking up...
farming the Ravens.
Yeah.
Like that last little vestige of Harbaugh connection.
D-tackle Lawrence Guy also ended up signing with the Patriots. So they had a lot of people leaving. Notable arrivals. Brandon Carr talked a little bit about this on the NFC East episode, but
well-traveled cornerback, decent guy.
Jeremy Maclin, who ended up getting cut by the Chiefs.
Good for 3 games a year.
Will probably be taking place of Steve Smith as far as like production and looks will go. Danny Woodhead, interesting. On paper, the Danny Woodhead signing was scary, but with the way that the Ravens' offseason is going, he was probably better off with the Western IR team and the Chargers.
Yeah.
So he's going. Maybe Danny Woodhead is the bad
juju.
Yeah, maybe because I mean the Ravens didn't really have any sort of injury issues long term or like mass casualty issues without Danny Woodhead. He leaves and suddenly the Chargers are doing fine. Ravens are now like dropping like flies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the bad juju is now with the Ravens, and the good juju got drafted by the Steelers.
Tackle Austin Howard, who the Raiders cut. Now with the Ravens, and then burnt toast Brandon Boykin.
Yes, your favorite corner of all time.
Probably won't make it onto the team, but I put him on here because that's too good to be true.
I mean, there's only really one team in that division he has to worry about.
AJ Green is still on the field. You know that, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. 2 teams in that division he has to worry about.
Yeah, because Terrell Pryor ain't there no more.
Truth.
Notable re-signings, quarterback. I didn't spell it right on here. Lardarius Webb. I spelled Ladarius Webb because I can't believe this guy has 2 R's in his name. Lardarius Webb. D-tackle Brandon Williams and linebacker Anthony Levine. Interesting. Ladarius Webb They won the Super Bowl without him on the field, so I really don't know how to feel. Like he ended up coming on at the end of, or right around 2011. Had some injury issues, was out on IR when they won the Super Bowl, switched to free safety, ended up getting an extension on here. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be him and Eric Weddle back there. Eric Weddle.
I shudder at the name Eric Weddle. Arguably best safety in the league.
Ended up getting Anthony Levine some money. Will be good opposite Donnell Ellerbe. It's interesting because I think I'll probably talk about this a little bit later. Won't get into this now because we still got their draft to go. But Marlon Humphrey, there was their first round pick as a cornerback. Talked about this. Really deep cornerback class, but I feel like he has the possibility to be the best corner coming out of this because we still don't know what's going to happen with Sidney Jones. You don't know if you're necessarily going to come back from an Achilles injury.
Right.
Marcus Lattimore was a one-year wonder as far as the Ohio State cornerbacks go, and I think it's the similar kind of thing with Garyon Conley, and they are all kind of in the same range. So. We'll see. I always thought that he had great press coverage, but didn't really have the makeup speed because when he got beat big and he got beat long. But anything ahead of him or that he could run with was almost getting knocked down or intercepted. Like he is as close to a college shutdown corner with the way they play offense in college nowadays.
Well, that's weird. Does Alabama put their cornerbacks on the line?
Round 2, Tyus Bowser. I'm going to say best name in the draft.
Is it because of Tyus or because of Bowser?
I don't know. Maybe both. That's a fucking awesome name.
That's pretty badass. And he's a linebacker. This is a guy who's going to, truck you and then fuck your girl. Not even in that order.
So adding to linebacker depth, 3-4 defense. Linebackers are the most important thing that they have, rotational depth on that end, because the same way that 4-3 defenses, they like to rotate their lines because they need fresh bodies to be rushing the quarterback. Same thing, outside linebackers are really important. And you, like I said, with Elvis Duverville being on that edge of maybe a disappointment since they signed him, and granted, he was getting up there in years, so I don't think they were expecting like a 14.5 sack season out of him, but they haven't gotten anybody to really rush the passer that wasn't named Terrell Suggs in a while. So I think that's what they're hoping for out of him, because he's a guy out of UCLA? Houston. I'm sorry. That must have been somebody else that I was looking at. Chris Wormley, defensive end out of Michigan. Tim Williams, outside linebacker out of Alabama. I think he's going to be underrated too. Him with the combination of Reuben Foster ended up making a really good linebacking or Alabama linebacking core last season. So he might end up being underrated. We'll see what he ends up doing going forward. Nico Siragusa, guard out of San Diego State. Jermaine Elamuner, lineman, Texas A&M. Round 6, Chuck Clark, safety out of Virginia Tech. So, interesting draft. Like I said, I think I'm looking at Marlon Humphrey. Maybe I think maybe one of the best, if not the best, cornerback in the draft. But we really didn't talk about this. Joe Flacco is injured. So they just had their 2017, their first preseason game. Ryan Mallett started. No surprise. He looked awful.
Yeah. Anybody got a completion for Ryan Mallett?
So, and I don't know. I think the whole Colin Kaepernick thing has gotten blown out of proportion a little bit because, I mean, if you forgot, he got replaced by Blaine Gabbert last year with the 49ers. So it's
Blaine Goatbert. Mizzou great, Blaine Goatbert.
He got replaced by Blaine Gabbert last year. So all these people who are clamoring for Colin Kaepernick to get onto the field, there's not 32 backups out there, 32 starting quarterbacks out there that are better than Colin Kaepernick. I disagree. Granted, I don't think that he shouldn't have a job. There's people out here who are backing people up that are completely untested, completely unproven. Colin Kaepernick did go to a Super Bowl. Granted, Trent Dilfer also has a Super Bowl ring, and Rex Grossman did go to a Super Bowl, so it depends on how you want to look at this.
This is the rare time I'll support Kaepernick, because if you're going to replace Joe Flacco for injuries, you need somebody who can throw an inaccurate deep ball. And Colin Kaepernick is your fucking guy. And he's going to be cheap because he's on the welfare. So, this is the one team out of all teams that I think that Colin Kaepernick would be a fit. I keep saying, yes, they're going to pick him up, and they keep not doing it. So I don't know what the fuck's going on. That man could totally back up. He's the same build as Joe Flacco. He's the same intelligence as Joe Flacco. You slap a creepy porn stash on him, he is Joe Flacco.
Is he a dragon?
He might be chasing the dragon.
It's interesting. Yeah, Marty Morningwig is the OC for Baltimore. He also was the OC when Michael Vick had that amazing season in Philadelphia.
Legendary season.
If there's somebody that can build around Kaepernick as far as a game plan would go, and this is not saying that Joe Flacco is going to be out, because nothing's come out that said that Joe Flacco is going to be out for any amount of the season. Maybe a game or two in the beginning if things go badly. So I feel like this, like I said, a lot of this Colin Kaepernick stuff is probably getting blown out of proportion, because it's a fun thing to talk about, and it's the only thing to talk about on a 24-hour news network that will be unnamed. But
until Ezekiel Elliott.
But yeah, I mean, when you got Ryan Mallett out there backing up, and you see what he's doing against the twos, it's hard not to look at Colin Kaepernick and say, well, how bad could it really be?
You ready for a hot take? Joe Flacco is the biggest problem with the Baltimore Ravens, and Colin Kaepernick might actually be a better solution for them going forward. because he would be a lot cheaper.
That's what's interesting is that, like, Joe Flacco did get paid after that Super Bowl.
And the team got gutted as a result.
And Colin Kaepernick had a terrible season last year, and we don't know if it's because he lost weight, wasn't playing in a system that he was comfortable with, had no talent around him, or he was just bad. It's hard to know if it's a combination of all the four, if it was one of the four, two of the four, any subset of all of them. I mean, I was a proponent of the Colin Kaepernick is just overrated and terrible thing because when you really look at it, like, because for the 2 seasons that he was relevant and Russ was up and coming, it was Kaepernick versus Russ, and you could see the difference in their game. Whereas
one was good and one was tall.
So we'll see. I definitely think he should be somewhere in the league at least. But if there's anywhere where he could at least be a backup, I mean, the Ravens are a good enough place as any, because, I mean, it's better than Ryan Mallett, and I mean,
anything's better than Ryan Mallett. He's incompetent and arrogant.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens going forward, but it could be interesting, is all I'm saying. So, with that, just to break the ice here, I don't think we're gonna go much farther on this, but I have them going 6-10, the Ravens. I don't have much confidence in them. They win 8-8, and I felt like that was overperforming actually what they did. And I mean, with all the injuries that they're having going forward, they just lost one of their guards for the season. They really don't have much of an offense. They're still trying to find their way as far as running back. They haven't had anything since the Sheriff was there, and even he wasn't that like big of a stay. Ended up just being a flash in the pan for about a season and a half.
Are you talking about Justin Forsett?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So without a running game and basically a long ball game when Joe Flacco is inaccurate at best, it's going to be hard to put up points on the board consistently.
Yeah.
And your biggest, meanest person left in Steve Smith, and you replaced him with Jeremy Maclin. And don't get me wrong, love Jeremy Maclin, but it's just not the same. No,
Steve Smith is a true number one. Jeremy Maclin is a true first on to IR. I didn't have the Ravens doing any better. I had them 4-12, 5-11. They're going to have a losing season. I think that the problem with the Ravens right now is they want
to win now.
They want to win now, but they're in a rebuild, and they're not committing to the rebuild. They're like half-assing a rebuild. They're like trying to ride this, like, we overpaid Flacco, and we've had a few offensive weapons, and we've had like some serviceable D-line play, so we think we can compete, but really they're rebuilding every year, and they need to just dive in, accept that they're in rebuild mode, and fucking do it. And this is going to be the year that I think starts it. They're going to have a much worse year, a sub-500 record, and hope to God for their sake that they actually rebuild the team, because right now they're falling behind in such a way that if the Browns actually build upon everything they've been doing the past couple of years, we could have the Ravens being the bottom of that division within the next 2 to 3 years.
I was going to say it wouldn't surprise me with if things go well for the Browns, very well, and things go very poorly for the Ravens in terms of injuries and overall play. It wouldn't surprise me if the Browns ended up ahead of the Ravens when it comes down to it. So yeah. It's just really weird for a team that won the Super Bowl not 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, amazing, right?
So going on, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati.
Don't do that shit.
2016 record 6-9-1, one of 4 teams to end the season with a tie.
We saw one of those wins live.
Fuck you. Home 4-3-1, away 2-6. Generally, you're going to find teams that have these kinds of records. They're not going to do well on the road. They're not going to do particularly well in home, but they're not going to do well on the road either. Notable departures. They parted ways with Ray Maluga, who is still a free agent.
Shocking. I mean, he's old, but still shocking.
Guard Kevin Zeitler, who is now one of the highest paid guard in the league, signed with the Browns.
Huge loss.
Tackle Andrew Whitworth, who was 35, but he was their starting left tackle, signed with the Rams. So
waste of a tackle.
D tackle D'Amato Pecco, signed with the Broncos.
I say D'Amato, you say D'Amato.
Running back Rex Burkhead signed with the Patriots, who I think is going to be interesting because nobody really talked about this as it was happening. But
I know, now this guy's going to have like 1,800 yards and like 15 touchdowns or some crazy shit because he's a left field Patriot running back now.
They didn't have any semblance of a passing game last season because LaFell was still new. They were missing Sanu. AJ Green was just not healthy. You're looking weird, like it.
Sanu went to the Falcons, didn't he?
Yeah, Sanu was gone.
Yeah,
so they were missing Sanu. Giovanni Bernard ended up getting hurt. Jeremy Hill ended up getting hurt. It was to the point where Rex Burkhead was starting for them, and he's like a Danny Wood-esque type character. He hasn't like blown up, and I think this year on the Patriots, it's going to happen. So. It'll be interesting. If they would have been able to keep him, I think with the team that is healthy now, they could have been doing some interesting things with him. But, they went from the Bengals are going to go from one end of the spectrum where they couldn't throw the ball because they had no wide receivers to just basically not being able to run the ball more than likely because they lack an offensive line at this point. Notable arrivals, linebacker Kevin Mintner, and tackle Andre Smith, and defensive end Wallace Gilberry. And then they ended up re-signing Brandon Lavelle, extending him out, extending cornerback Drake Kirkpatrick. And then they extended a restricted free agent tender to one of their 7th-round picks a couple years ago in center TJ Johnson, who they think could be an important part of their line going forward.
Yeah, he's either going to be their center of the future or maybe somebody that'll play guard.
Yeah, I think that's what they're looking at as far as guard goes. NFL draft, number 9, John Ross.
They did it. They did it.
What'd they do?
They did it. They're the team that was like, we'll take John Ross. The Oakland Raiders of Cincinnati, Kentucky. That's who they are.
It's not like they have an off-injured wide receiving core with AJ Green and Tyler Eifert, and then probably flash in the
Tyler Eifert.
I stand by what I said.
I think it was subconscious, but that happened.
Brandon LaFell, who I think got paid because he played for the Patriots, just like all other Patriots wide receivers will. Yeah. So. It's an interesting thing. He's a speedy guy, but he's a speedy guy who's had a history of leg injuries. So, small guy, speedy. When it's one of those things where you're built upon your shiftiness, your athleticism, how fast you can go, definitely don't want to have a history of leg injuries. So we'll see. It was one of those things where, because he was in that range where the Eagles could have been picking, I didn't want to see him go there. And when the Bengals jumped on that grenade, I was like, you know what? If he's great, good. If he's bad, even better.
I'm just going to point out, this is a man that lost an island because he was wearing the wrong shoes.
Whoa. Back that up. I'm unfamiliar with this story.
Oh, Adidas was doing that thing where if you wore their shoes to the combine and you broke like the 40-yard dash record, they were going to give you an island.
Oh, and he didn't wear the shoes.
He didn't wear the shoes. Could have got an island. It would have been like John Ross Island. Or whatever the fuck you'd call it.
Round 2, running back out of Oklahoma, Joe Mixon. Out right there. That's the reaction. Interesting pick.
So glad it was them and not us.
They've got a decent backfield in Jeremy Hill, who tends to be a downhill running back. Giovanni Bernard, who's their third down pass catching back.
Right.
But I think Joe Mixon could be both. Joe Mixon could be the best running back to come out of this class.
You think he's going to mix in well with their offense?
I think he's going to mix in very well. Very, very well.
Oh, God.
It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being the best running back in this class.
Ooh. Wow. We'll see.
Granted, I'm saying a lot of things.
He's white.
Here, but wasn't big on Christian McCaffrey. I think they reached on him. Leonard Fournette went to the Jaguars, so that's enough said.
And injuries.
Yeah, and Joe Mixon definitely. Joe Mixon has some injury issues too, as well as off the field problems. But that seems to be something that's consistent with the way that Marvin Lewis likes to run his locker room.
They haven't he likes scumbags. He's, are you an asshole? Do you have off-field issues? Come to Cincinnati, Kentucky.
You keep calling it that place. I don't like it. Round 3, Jordan Willis, defensive end out of Kansas State. They had James Harrison that one year. That was probably their best edge rusher, and he had arguably his worst year of his career in Cincinnati.
James Harrison's so good, he's back. He's back in this episode.
Carlos Dunlap is actually the person that they have rushing off the edge. Geno Atkins is their defensive tackle that can get some sacks. But between the two of them, I think they had 17 sacks. But that's about it as far as their pressure goes. So they're looking to have something.
They had a down year on their defense last year.
All across the board, they had a down year.
That's true too.
So they're going to. I don't think they're going to expect much of anything out of here, but he's definitely going to be at least a rotational player. Carl Lawson, defensive end out of Auburn. Same kind of thing. They're looking for pass rush, important in a passing league first. Josh Malone, wide receiver out of Tennessee. Ryan Glasgow, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Interesting enough, 3 out of the 4 picks that they had in round 4 were defensive linemen. So you really know where they're targeting as far as where they believe was their shortcomings going forward. And in a division where you have to see Le'Veon Bell twice, it can't hurt to have people to just throw at him and hope they tackle him.
Yeah, and we can't overlook that 5th round pick, Jake Elliott.
Kicker.
I
told you they were going to do some crazy shit.
Yeah.
This division's doing crazy, crazy things.
They missed so many field goals last year.
Yeah, Mike Nugent
was just we saw him miss 4 field goals in the game that we went to.
I think he missed a couple extra points and a couple field goals. Yeah, he ended up missing about six field goals and 6 extra points at least before they ended up letting him go. And then the guy they ended up replacing him with wasn't much better. No. So they're going out here and they're like, "Listen, man, we need us a Roberto Aguayo,
who missed a kick in the preseason so far."
So they were like, "We need us a specialist, man. We need us somebody as great as Roberto Aguayo, but we're going to get him 3 rounds later."
Yeah. You can't beat that. You can't go. You either go 1st round or you go 5th round. You don't do anything else.
So yeah, kicker. Hopefully he's going to end up doing some good things for them. They left a lot of points on the board. A lot of close games out there because of kicking woes. J.J. Dielman, center out of Utah. For all the issues that they had as far as linemen went, first lineman that they picked was a center in round 5. So we'll see what their plans are as far as offense goes. I really think that they're going to pass it on every down. I really don't think that they're going to have much of a running game going forward. Round 6, Jordan Evans, linebacker out of Oklahoma. Brandon Wilson, cornerback, Houston. Mason Shrek, tight end, Buffalo. I love the name Shrek because a lot of people will go like Shrek ogre movie. But I always think Max Shrek from Batman Returns.
Of course you would. You of all people, of course you would. Yeah.
It's Christopher Walken. How are you gonna?
One of us should have bought it. It's on Blu-ray, $5.99 this week. One of us should have bought it.
But yeah, interesting. I think we both. Well, I'd like to see where you are on this because I think they're going to bounce back.
9-7.
9-7.
I got them 9-7.
I had them at 10-6, just barely missing the playoffs. They were the 7 as far as I went.
I had them the 8.
They missed it on tiebreakers. 3-3 in the division, beating up on the teams around them. But I do think the AFC North has a record that favors heavy win loss total.
Yeah.
So I do think they're going to come back. Andy Dalton didn't do well. Tyler Eifert was injured for most of last year, so he really didn't get much of anything going, which ended up hurting their red zone offense. Joe Mixon, I'd watch out for him. He might end up really, really mixing it up over there in Cincinnati in the running back position. Like I said, A.J. Green will come back. He'll be better. Brandon LaFell will have another year in the offense. And, I mean, Cincinnati tends to do well during the regular season. And granted, I mean, I went in on the Panthers last episode, so I mean they could have missed they totally 100% could have missed that window that was open for them when they were dominating that division.
The Bengals are a 10-11 win team over the past few years. They've got the talent. Last year was a down year. You know, they had games where maybe if your kicker wasn't missing field goals and extra points, you might squeak by a win here and there.
Right.
But ultimately, you know, down year, they addressed some pretty significant concerns, including kicker, and they took a flyer on a wide receiver who runs really fast because Darius Hayward-Bay is an NFL legend. So we'll see. I mean, yeah, they could bounce back, but with the AFC being as ridiculously lopsided as it is right now, you know, the playoffs aren't in their future this year or next year.
At least not with the way that the Steelers are playing. At least not the way that the Steelers are projected to be playing the next couple of years. Like, they suddenly flipped where we were looking at it, and we were looking at the Steelers as the Bengals were going 11 wins, 12 wins in a season, and saying, what happened here? When did the Bengals become good? And then just like that, the Steelers are back there doing it differently with a crazy high-flying offense. So if there's going to be a battle between who would win this division, I definitely think it's going to be between the Steelers and the Bengals. And I have the Steelers and the Bengals way closer on record than you do. You have them going like 14-2, whereas I have the Steelers just barely eking it out at 11-5.
Yeah, I think the entire Steelers roster is going to go down to the river and take a shit, and it's going to float down to Cincinnati.
I don't think you know how geography works.
No, yeah, it works that way.
How a river flows up. Flows north.
No, it doesn't. It flows south.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right, well, I'm wrong.
Yeah. I don't think you understand how geography works.
I don't think I understand how geography works.
The Ohio River is like a tributary to the Mississippi River.
That one flows upward.
No, that one flows south as well.
Oh, shit.
I'm going to teach you about rivers. We're going to do a whole new podcast about rivers. We'll start with the Felipe, and we'll work our way outward.
Last
moment of truth.
I wanted to say certainly not least, but maybe the Cleveland Browns. I always see, whenever I see a Browns fan out in the wild, like out in real life, first I feel like David Attenborough. So I'm like, oh my god, they're real.
We watch as the sloth walks through Walmart. He has a brown and orange shirt on that says couch on the back. He looks sad and like he hasn't had a meal in 17 years.
In a very long time.
Very long. Wait. He has no children. He was unable to find a mate. But you gotta respect them.
Last year, the Browns, definitely the worst team in the league, with a 1-15 record. They themselves were trusting the process. Home record 1-7, away record 0-8, good enough for fourth in the AFC. Definitely no playoffs.
Good enough for fourth in the AFC North. You said in the AFC. That was insulting to a lot of teams.
Apologies. Notable departures, the only wide receiver in the past 10 years to wear a Browns uniform and get over 1,000 yards, Terrell Pryor, who technically wasn't even a wide receiver before this year.
Wait, Josh Gordon had 1,000 yards. Josh Gordon had 1,000 yards.
Yeah, rivers flow upwards, whatever.
And then he got high. Terrell Pryor, Raiders, great. One of the biggest surprise wide receivers in the league. The one shining star left on the Browns that wasn't named Joe Louis, and he went off to Washington so he could have another 1,000-yard season.
They had an exodus at the quarterback position. I mean, it's not like any of them were lighting it up.
Oh, God, they lost Clipboard Jesus.
Robert Griffin III, gone. Charlie Whitehurst, gone. Josh McCown, gone. Now with the Jets. Probably going to be starting. So, maybe Josh McCown is also the bad luck. We're not sure. Jury's still out on that. We'll figure out Josh McCown, Danny Woodhead. We'll get back to you guys. Defensive coordinator Ray Horton. I mean, you lost 15 games. You can't expect to have a job, man. Safety Jordan Poyer signed with Buffalo. And quarterback Tramon Williams, formerly of the Green Bay Packers, signed with the Cardinals.
Yeah, an underrated part of their defense, I think. A good addition for the Cardinals, for sure.
Notable rivals, Brock Osweiler. Great trade. They the Houston Texans, and granted, we've a lot of talk about this, but they basically
bought Cap.
Yeah.
The first time in NFL history a team bought Cap.
They were like, here, take him. We don't need him.
We don't afford him. We were drunk last year when we thought that was a good idea. What number did Peyton wear? 18. Give this guy that many million.
Also ended up paying Kenny Britt, which
teams keep doing that. Teams
you were like,
why does Kenny Britt keep like Kenny Britt's out there like I'm a 1, then plays like a 3, and then settles to be a 2 somewhere. Like I don't know how he does it.
I mean, a 2 in Cleveland is a 1 somewhere, right? Or is it a 2 in somewhere is a 1 in Cleveland? Is that how it?
Like the wide receiver situation in Cleveland's been so bad for years that Sammy Coates would go there and instantly become the quarterback.
Kenny Britt got paid, went there. Kevin Zeitler from the Bengals went there. So they're actually going to have a halfway decent line, which is probably why a lot of people are projecting Isaiah Crowell as having a decent fantasy season. We'll see. They don't have any sort of offense to speak of that isn't named Crowell. So that's probably it as well. Quarterback Jason McCourty also came to Buffalo. By Buffalo, I mean Cleveland. Center J.C. Treader, and then defensive coordinator Greg Williams. If you guys are thinking, who's that? Greg Williams. That name sounds familiar. Bountygate.
Oh, Bountygate.
Bountygate. That's where you know him from. Bounty.
Oh, man. Ben Roethlisberger's going to die by fucking week 3.
He got fired with Jeff Fisher.
That's how you know you're not on a good train.
And got picked up by Cleveland. So we'll see. Arguably made Aaron Donald into the player that he is now. And spoiler alert, the Cleveland Browns were the first pick in the draft. They ended up picking Myles Garrett. So maybe Greg Williams can turn Myles Garrett into an Aaron Donald.
Murder machine?
I doubt it because of lots of the reasons.
You have those years where you have a player who is a consensus 1, and you have those years where you're like, I guess we'll take this guy at the 1 if nobody's willing to trade up. And this is the year where you had that consensus 1, and he went to Cleveland, which means this guy is going nowhere.
Don't you feel bad?
I mean, should I feel bad for him? He played at Texas A&M.
I don't know. I mean, I personally thought he was highly overrated. I mean, strength of competition.
We thought that about Joey Bosa last year.
You're getting players. Well, he played better teams in the Big Ten than Texas A&M played in the SEC because they played. They only played Alabama. They played Missouri, and I think they played Auburn or Ole Miss or something along those lines.
The competition thing is so weak because remember a few years ago when you had. He
also could have. I mean, there's definitely plays where I saw him just not taking plays off, I guess, is the best way to put it, where it's just, I question the motor of somebody like this versus somebody like a Derek Barnett or the guy, Solomon Wilcots, for example, the 49ers took. Both linemen, Wilcots more of a D tackle, Barnett being more of an analogous to Myles Garrett. But Tennessee in the SEC played more highly ranked opponents than Texas A&M did, and he put up just as good numbers as him. So it's one of those things where, why did Garrett go 1 and Barnett go 14?
Well, it's the same thing as
measurables. I mean,
a few years ago you had Jadeveon Clowney and you had Khalil Mack, and everyone was like, Khalil Mack didn't have the strength of competition. He played at Buffalo. Like, yeah, he looks good, but he was playing against scrubs. And then you got Clowney, who now has an official history of injuries, and maybe he can be the guy. And then you've got like the first player to ever go All-Pro at 2 positions in one season. So Bosa was very good. Could Myles Garrett be that guy? No, I don't think that. But hot take.
Hottish take. Warm take.
Lukewarm take.
They had 3 first-round picks. They traded up in the first round at the end to get a third one. But they had picks to spend, so it's going to be a bit long-winded. They ended up going with Jabril Peppers.
I wanted, actually.
No. Overrated.
You think?
Bust. Immediate bust.
Ooh, we'll see. I mean, he's playing for the Browns, so it's going to be hard to judge.
Played for Michigan, played like 5 positions while he was at Michigan because they just couldn't figure out what they wanted to do.
Position title, athlete.
Yeah, technically a safety, technically a linebacker, also a running back, like a punt returner, wide receiver. Played a little of like the wildcat quarterback as well, just because he was so athletic. But I mean, you do a bunch of things good, that means you don't do anything well. You don't do anything proficiently. You're not great at anything.
Bo Jackson would like to have words with you.
There's 2 different sports.
Michael Jordan would not like to have words with you.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you put him out on these different areas, and in the college scene, you're supposed to be honing in what you need to be doing, or at least getting an idea of what you're doing. You're playing him at safety. You're playing him at linebacker. You're putting him on offense. That's spreading what he was able to actually do as far as like honing his craft. So now he gets drafted ahead of all these other people who were more proven, in my opinion, and will be expected to contribute at a high level because he is a first-round pick, when he really doesn't even have a position that we can put him at. I mean, what is he? He's too small to be a safety. He's not rangy enough, or he's too small to be a linebacker. He's not rangy enough to be a safety. He doesn't necessarily have the field vision in the hands.
He'll bulk up and he'll be like a baby Earl Thomas.
I mean, that's the best that you can hope for, but that's like his top end side. I mean, at worst, he's going to be that weird tweener outside linebacker that's not really great at covering, but isn't big enough to shed blocks to actually rush the quarterback. He's a really weird position. I'm glad that teams that I wanted to stay away from him stayed away from him, because I just didn't see it. I really didn't. And I mean, watched a lot of Big Ten football, and there was a lot of hype surrounding him because of what he could do. But same thing with Myles Garrett is what I was saying. Scouts love potential. Myles Garrett has potential. He has measurables. So does Jabril Peppers. But I mean, what does he actually bring?
Versatility to a team that lacks it.
I guess that's fair. I mean, that's fair, but I just don't...
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, you take Myles Garrett off the table there, Jabril Peppers is probably the most intriguing player on that defense now.
Intriguing because you don't know what you're getting. Intriguing because you don't know what he's going to do. Not intriguing because you think he's going to go out there and lay the hurt on people.
You put like 15, 20 pounds of muscle on him, like he could be ridiculous. I mean, you have a lot of options. Regardless, he can go out there on special teams and at least be useful. Because, I mean, he's a rookie. What are you going to do? Rookie safeties aren't typically lights out in any form or fashion.
David Njoku, tight end out of Miami. When it comes down to it, Cleveland just needs weapons. They went up and they said, "Hey, not any wide receivers we want to pick up at the moment. as far as draft goes. This guy's obviously the best tight end that they have out right now because Evan Ingram and O.J. Howard had already gotten picked, Giants and Tampa Bay Buccaneers respectively. So they're like, hey, basically I feel like this was a fuck it move by them, where they're just like, we just need to get better at a position.
Yeah.
This guy's better than what we have. Let's roll the dice on him. Round 2, Deshaun Kaiser, quarterback, Notre Dame.
Once projected to maybe be the guy in this draft, and he, fell last year.
Yeah, Notre Dame is really interesting. The way they set their schedule up, I think, doesn't lend itself to players transitioning well or getting drafted and getting scouted at high levels.
Yeah, they're...
Golden Tate was probably the only one that I've seen recently that I can think of that was like, you came out of Notre Dame, everybody was like, this guy got drafted and actually performed fairly well for Seattle and then the Lions after that.
I think eventually Notre Dame's going to have like an actual like conference identity and like a consistent, competition schedule that where maybe you can project their players better, but Notre Dame's one of those schools. It's like up, down, up, down, up, down.
They're up, down, up, down.
It's inconsistent as hell.
And the only consistent team, or the only team that they play consistently, will generally be USC. And USC's been up and down this whole time too, so it's hard to really project what's going on here. Regardless, like we talked about, they had a complete exodus at the quarterback position. The only person that they have that was here last year was Cody Kessler. And I don't necessarily think that they think he's the guy. I
think he could be the guy.
He performed well. I mean, he's Simeon-esque if you want to put him in that area.
I was about to say he's better than Osweiler.
And I mean, given how he performed numbers wise, all the issues that he had with the Browns being the Browns, Cody Kessler could be a serviceable quarterback, but they definitely wanted to get some competition in there. They definitely thought highly of Kaiser to pick him in the second round. But being a second round pick, I think it alleviates some possible pressure that it may have. So there's no way he starts. I don't think. I think they're going to let him sit.
I think
for
they'll
sure.
give it to Kessler because yesterday Osweiler basically guaranteed that he won't be the starter. He did not have a good preseason one. You've got Kessler, who was serviceable last year.
Completely forgot about Osweiler being there because it was one of those things where I completely thought they were going to cut him. I didn't think they were going to even keep him.
Yeah.
And then they're going to keep him. I'm like, are you sure, Hugh Jackson? Do you really want to bet that what could possibly be the last year of your coaching career or head coaching career in Cleveland on Brocky Osweiler? Is that really what you want to do, man? Brock Lobster? I don't think so.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was one of those things like you make the trade to get the pick, you see what you've got, you saw what you got. There's a reason that he's here now. He went from Super Bowl winning backup quarterback to the starter for the Texans, sort of, and then just being trade fodder. And ending up in Cleveland, it's obvious.
They
this
felt
was
that
his last chance.
The Texans felt that they had something better in Tom Savage and possibly Deshaun Watson, knowing that they might have had a shot at Watson going into the draft, than they did being comfortable with Osweiler.
Yeah,
so
that says all you need to say.
Round 3, Larry. I'm gonna fuck this up. Ogunjobi. Thought it was something along those lines. Ogunjobi, defensive tackle out of Charlotte. Round 4, Howard Wilson, cornerback out of Houston. Round 5, Roderick Johnson, tackle, Florida State. 6, Caleb Brantley, D-tackle, Florida. 7, Zane Gonzalez, place kicker. Another kicker.
Woo! Special teams.
Arizona State. And then round 7, Matt Days, running back, NC State.
So what we learned from this draft is the Browns needed every position.
Yes. They're going to need every position for a little while here.
Yeah.
That's why they have all the picks.
Yeah. And I think they more or less drafted one of everything except for guard.
And granted, that front office has gone through quite a bit of change going forward. If they're able to develop this talent, if they think Hugh Jackson
Actually, yeah, no, I got it all. They think that Hugh Jackson can be this guy. If they think that 1-15, that 1-15 season was an aberration, because you got to look back at the 0-16 Lions. I mean, you had Stafford on that team, you had Megatron on that team. They didn't completely lack talent, you know. Stafford could have wholly gone to the playoffs this last year, and Megatron is quite possibly one of the best wide receivers to ever play the game. So 1-15 doesn't necessarily reflect how terrible this team might have been.
No, the logo does.
They changed
orange
it from,
helmeted sportsman of America.
Is it orange though? They changed it from like an orange to like a deepish red color. It's really weird. I don't like it.
I don't know.
I don't like it.
This is a team that went 1-15 last year, and I am fully confident that this team is going to go 1-15 this year.
Really?
Yes.
Hot take.
They lost their number one receiver. The best.
They got Kenny Britt. What are you talking about?
They lost the best player on their team last year that wasn't named Joe Thomas.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Joe Hayden's still there.
Joe Hayden is over the hill. No, Joe Hayden was once in contention to be top cornerback like 4 years ago. Not the case anymore. This team's been depleted of talent for 45,000 years. It's ghosts in every position. They have no definitive answer at quarterback, no definitive answer at wide receiver, Isaiah Kroll maybe, but no definitive answer at running back, which is just terrifying. Because now you have the three most important offensive positions just not doing anything at all with any certainty. You flip over to the defense, and okay, what do you got? Myles Garrett, you hope to God that he can like solidify your edge. It's a mess. It's a fucking team. It's 1-15. That's all I've got for them. 1-15. And they'll still be like the third or fourth pick in the draft.
5-11.
Jesus fucking Christ! What? Hot take.
You can call this my limb for the year.
Hot
I have
take.
I have a couple limbs that I'm going out here. Panthers being one, the Buccaneers being another. I have one more to go on in the next couple episodes. But
who the hell are they beating to get 5 wins?
The Ravens for one. The Jets. I know they played the Jets this year too. So
that was the one win I gave them.
There's a guarantee.
I gave them the Jets win. That was it.
So I think they're going to surprise some people.
Man,
I think I gave them a win over the Steelers just because, which might not happen. You know, they'll sneak some. I think they'll sneak some wins. It's just a gut feeling. I don't know. I want to believe in the Browns, don't you?
Hugh Jackson and me are not friends.
I mean, it's one of those things where every logical thing that has to say about football says that the Browns could possibly be the worst team in the league. And the only thing that's holding them back from being there is that the 49ers and the Jets exist.
You're giving them a better record. A better fucking record than I gave the Bills, the Lions, the Bears, and tied with and better than Jaguars. And also better or tied with the Ravens, the Redskins, the Giants. Like, you are giving the Browns credit.
I think you're underselling a lot of teams. Your schedule is very lopsided. You have to realize this, that your picks are very, very lopsided.
Because the schedules are very lopsided.
So I think the Browns can come out and I think they can surprise some people. I really do. You know how close the Browns were in a couple of these games last season? They really had a couple of those games.
Yeah, their bus showed up to the stadiums.
They could have easily have been 4-12. last season.
Yeah, and they got rid of
The Dolphins barely beat them in overtime. The Dolphins that went to the playoffs barely beat the Browns in overtime.
The Dolphins also beat the Steelers and eliminated us from our money league.
Awkward.
I'm just pointing that out to you. If you said what, 5 and 11?
5 and 11.
5 and 11. What can I bet? All right, I'll tell you what. I have a very cursed Derek Carr jersey. Whenever I wear this jersey, we lose. If the season ends and the Browns are 5 and 11, I will wear the Derek Carr jersey during the AFC Championship game.
Why? The Raiders won't be playing.
There's a decent chance they'll be in it. I will wear the Derek Carr jersey during the okay. If they're in the wild card, I'll wear it. If they're in the divisional, I'll wear it. If they're in the AFC Championship, I'll wear it. I won't wear it for the Super Bowl. I'll wear the Khalil Mack for that. If the Browns finish the season 5 and 11, I will wear my cursed Derek Carr jersey during the playoffs.
You better put some respect on the Browns' name.
I'm just saying, man. And also, if the Browns are lower than 5 and 11, I'll find like a cheap Ezekiel Elliott jersey, and you have to wear that during the NFC wild card round.
You're gross.
So that's going to do it. This division is one of the more clusterfucky divisions in the NFL, and yet this is the longest episode we've had so far this year because it's more fun to talk about bad teams than good teams.
5 and 11, guys. Count it. Write it down. Cleveland Browns coming at you.
No. Nobody's coming. Nobody's coming for the Browns. Nobody's coming with the Browns. Nobody's coming on the Browns.
Deshaun, Kaiser, and it at you. That didn't work.
Good night.